Hope everybody is doing well on this particular day. It is December 22nd, only 3 days until Christmas. So, definitely a lot of folks will be getting ready for Christmas Eve on Sunday. And of course, we'll probably take the day off on Christmas Day here at Pod TV. I know that sometimes if y'all see me coming from an office setting, it means I'm coming from the HI Heritage Center. And of course, we are continuing a regular tradition that we've had for a number of years of folks coming to take pictures with Black Santa and a company called Santa Like Me that comes by and definitely has folks taking pictures with Santa Claus in that kind of tradition and all along those lines. So I've already seen some people coming by and they've been there, young ones. As a matter of fact, yesterday we had a person that came by that I know quite well. They are, well, actually, I've known them for a while because I know their son because they used to be involved here in the center, that being Lionel Parker. And he brought his 101, you heard me correctly, 101-year-old mother to come and have her picture taken with Santa Claus. So that is a great tradition, having folks of all ages come and have their pictures taken with Santa Claus. So definitely Lionel brought his 101-year-old um, mother to come and have her picture taken with Santa. And like I said, I'm seeing a number of kids right now, not seeing anybody in that age range, but who knows? Maybe I'll see somebody else in that age range between today, tomorrow, and Sunday, because I believe that their hours are 10 until 5 today, 10 until 5 on Saturday, which is tomorrow, and 1 until 5 on Sunday. So if you're in Durham, North Carolina, you want to stop by the Hayti Heritage Center, I think you can go to Santa Like Me and make your appointment. There might be some walk-in appointments, I believe, on Sunday, but I know that right now a lot of the appointments are by appointment, so you can definitely go check out the company Santa Like Me and have your pictures taken and all along those lines. So the actual company, I believe, is called Santa's Just Like Me or something along that kind of space. But we're going to have a conversation around the legend and the how the whole Saint Nick thing came about in a matter of minutes. But let me get to a couple of news items, including some people that might be on the naughty list and all in that space. So unfortunately, Prague is searching for motives in its worst mass shooting since the World War II era. So definitely looks like the Prague gunman killed himself on the roof as police approach, and Prague wakes up in shock and horror after that senseless shooting attack left 14 dead in that particular area. And definitely it looks like the Colorado Trump ruling is leading to a rise in violent online rhetoric. So we're seeing that as well. And I know that one of the shows that we do here on the network, which deals with cannabis reform and definitely getting some of the people out of prison because of that, we'll be glad to know that there's going to be Biden issuing a pardon very shortly in that space and along those lines. I'm going to run just a quick spot right now, and then we'll get back to some of the news items as well. But if you hold on, I'm going to run a quick public spot, and then I've also seen that I've got Steve Rao with me as well. But let's just check this out for a minute. It's one of our other shows.
Hi, I'm Dr. Madeline Ann Lewis, host of the Successful Women Show, which airs every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our mission is to help women accelerate the path to success. Women in the workplace, women in business, and women who aspire to become business owners, live their dreams, and reach their goals. So join us Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So that'll be later on today. By the way, the story that I was referring to is that Biden is to issue pardons for certain marijuana offenses. So that is something that I know that Jeff Eichen, who is a part of our staff here and does a show around that called Weed Wednesday, will be glad to hear that particular news and all along those lines. Because, like I said, he is an advocate for getting people out that have been serving long terms for that particular offense. And it does look like that's going to be some pardons that will be handed down in that space and along those lines. And it looks like that, continuing with the bad news, like I said, there's a lot of naughtiness going on. So I don't think Santa's all that happy these days and everything. But more than 20,000 are dead in Gaza, which is a historic human toll. So that is showing staggering losses in the Israel Hamas war, as Gaza deaths have surpassed that particular number. And Japan is relaxing its weapons export policy to sell Patriot missiles to the United States. And the Norwegian cruise ship MS Maud lost power at sea, and rescue missions are underway. So the Norwegian cruise ship lost the navigation abilities in the North Sea during a storm. So maybe they needed some of that directional things that Santa's got with the reindeers and all along those lines. And the U.S. says it is ready to support an amended UN resolution aimed at boosting aid to Gaza. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news and all along those lines. I was actually going to get to another story that if Nick comes on, he might be interested in because it involves definitely pension funds and all along those lines. But apparently, here in North Carolina has barred investment in Ben and Jerry's after the world's famous ice cream seller said it didn't want to sell its products in Israeli settlements. So the announcement Thursday reflects continued controversy of whether the company should take positions on political issues after recent debates over corporate moves involving Starbucks, Disney, and others. So, State Treasurer Dale Folwell said his office is required by state law to add Ben and Jerry's to its list of companies subject to divestment and contract restrictions due to their boycott of Israel. This action includes affiliates of Ben and Jerry's, such as its parent company Unilever PLC and Unilever subsidiaries. Falwell ordered the state pension fund to divest itself of 40 million in Unilever assets, I should say, according to a press release. And I do know that some of the people, including some of the people with even Ben and Jerry's, were pointing out that they themselves, the founder of that particular company, are actually of a Jewish background themselves. So I guess that they are thinking that they can actually be critical of the country that is definitely known as a Jewish state and all along those lines. I'm going to bring in Steve real quickly. I know he's having some camera issues, and we'll also bring in the gentleman that's going to talk to us about St. Nick and maybe some of this naughty and nice stuff that's going on in the world and all in that space. I'm going to see if Steve's able to come on and if he's got some
Yeah,
comments that he wants to share.
I'm just coming with audio. I'm gonna get my camera fixed this week, or have to get a new machine, but it's not working. But I want to wish everyone a happy holidays and Merry Christmas. And what I was going to talk about today, but we can carry this forward next year, and I will try to be returning at least once a week for the full show. But you nailed a lot of the main issues going on. I mean, UN is, now U.S. is supporting the UN resolution to hold back on Gaza. We're hoping that there's some resolution to the conflict, and we pray for Prague. And the elephant in the room as we close out the year is what I would say the the strain on American democracy, and kind of the untested waters we're going down with the president. That a former president, most former presidents either seclude themselves and relax, enjoy some downtime, or they stay more visible in the public, like Jimmy Carter, President Clinton with his foundation. Obama's been a little quiet. And then you've got Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I mean, the amount of litigation, I'm losing count. It started with the hush money. You've got cases in Georgia on reversing the elections. You've got the Jack Smith cases, which are very serious, regarding leading the insurrection and other matters as such. And then there's also those about tax schemes and things like that. So at the end of the day, Mark, I just wanted to kind of say that this is going to be very interesting. How a former president who's under so much investigation, and will he be going to trial? Will he be missing some of the primaries? And how do we balance the fact that no one should be separate from law versus him playing that he's the victim and it's political attacks? And so this is either, in my opinion, a strategy to help his base to draw them out more, and then he wins, or would it be something that the Republicans say this is too much of a mess, and that Nikki Haley comes in and wins. So this is all going to be very exciting as we begin the new year. Um, we know that Rosalind Carter won, passed away. She and Jimmy Carter were given the CNN Heroes Award. Um, Taylor Swift, Time Magazine Person of the Year. Driving, there are positive things, but I think this has been the year of, maybe next year we'll do a year review. Gun violence, political turbulence, political division, and an economy that does look like we're headed towards a recession. So we'll see where it goes. But anyway, just wanted to give you my thoughts before I head out.
No, I appreciate that. Definitely some great thoughts. Like I said, I'm going to bring in Wayne, and he'll talk a little bit about the Saint Nick legacy.
Yeah, I want to just listen to that. Thank
And
you.
definitely it'll be interesting to see how this goes and everything. But it does see that the U.S. is going to clamp down on financial firms to help Russia buy military supplies. So this will be interesting because apparently Biden has signed an executive order targeting financial facilitators of Russian defense industry. So it looks like we are got sanctions that are going to be aimed at being tougher at banks in that are, I guess, supporting some of the Russian military. So that'll be interesting as well. We were actually talking about sanctions a little bit and how effective they are on yesterday. And does look like even in your cases that the judge is saying the Georgia election workers can expedite efforts to collect from Rudy Giuliani. So Rudy Giuliani has recently declared bankruptcy after being ordered to pay it looks like about 150 million in a defamation lawsuit. So there's a lot of these things that are taking place, as you just said, and looks like rain will be lashing Southern California today as floods threaten to persist in some areas and all in that space. And definitely, we're hearing a lot of conversations even around the college presidents and how they handled the whole dealing of anti-Semitic comments in their campuses and all along those lines. So definitely, like you said, there's a lot of things that are going on. But I'll bring in my special guest. We have another special guest to join us very shortly. But I want to bring in Mr. Wayne Van Der Wal, and all in that space. So glad to have you here with us and all along those lines. And if you can just share a little bit, because like I said, we talked about a number of the things that are going on in the world, and I don't know how St. Nick is feeling about all this over there in the North Pole, because there's a lot of things that are going on in a negative standpoint in the world. And of course, he stays out of the political fray as much as he can, even though I'm sure he has to negotiate with those reindeer. And who knows, the reindeer may even have their own union and all along those lines. We're going to have to find out if they've been unionized or not, because I could see Rudolph and maybe even Prancer organizing a union or trying to organize one. And I can definitely see the elves trying to get a union since they do a whole lot of work all year long and all in that space. So you can just share a little bit about your own research around St. Nick and how this whole kind of thought of came about and how we learned about Santa Claus. Because like I said, we've actually got Black Santa Claus that's over here, and there's a number of kids. As a matter of fact, I see one right now going in a nice little outfit, and they got some strollers that are coming in to take pictures. So it looks like some very young people are coming as well. But you just share a little bit about your own thoughts about St. Nick and how you got involved in researching this fantastic individual.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Mark. Glad to be here. Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas, Mark. Yeah, you hear about the news and it's like, wow, what a downer, bad news here, bad news there, but the great thing about St. Nicholas, the real St. Nicholas and Santa Claus is it's all about good news. And 'tis the season to, we can't ignore what's going on around the world, but this is a time of year where we can focus on some good news. That's good news no matter what's happening in the world. And we have that to cling to for hope. And it all starts with love, joy, and peace. And so just to share about St. Nick, how I got involved in this is back in 2008, I went through divorce, worst year of my life. Christmas came around. I was a single father too, had 11-year-old daughter, 9-year-old son. And, we always emphasize the birth of Jesus for Christmas. But now that things were different and we were, a separate home now, really wanted to emphasize, find more meaning for Christmas. And so I always knew there was a connection between Saint Nick and Santa Claus. The story "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Its original title was "A Visit from Saint Nick," and it starts "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that Saint Nicholas would soon be there." And so I knew there was a connection. So I started digging, finding any and every source I could at the library, online, and trying to piece it all together. And as I'm doing this, I'm visual. So a movie of his life is forming in my head as I'm researching that December of 2008, because what I want to do is, find out more about him and share with my kids, who the real Saint Nick was. And his story was just so inspirational and just so amazing. I was like, wow, I was a Christian, grew up Catholic, and then, Christian most of my life, and I never knew his true story. And so here you have the birth of Jesus in Israel. They're ruled by the Roman Empire. Fast forward 300 years, 370 AD, 380, depending on the source you look at. Nicholas is born, and he's born in the country called Lycia at the time, but that's today's country, Turkey. So the original Saint Nicholas is actually Turkish, and he was born on the coast of the Mediterranean in a town called Patara. And he was his parents were wealthy Christians living in a Greek society ruled by the Roman Empire. So you got the Christians, you got the Greek gods, you got the Roman gods. I mean, talk about tumultuous times that he was born in. So, but they were wealthy, and they died when he was young in a plague. Here we just went through a pandemic. We don't use the word plague today, but basically the same thing. His parents passed away when he was young. He inherited their vast fortune and felt called by God to give it away. So he gave his fortune away to the poor, the sick, the suffering, and that began the whole legend of his generosity and kindness and giving spirit. And then he went on, of course, to give of his time and energy and life, dedicated his life to God. He went on to become a priest in the church. He traveled to Israel and then came back to Turkey and then became a bishop in the church. And so he was high up in the church. But during that time, Emperor Diocletian was in power, and he was one of the worst Roman emperors who persecuted, one of the worst persecuting Christians at that time. So he and Nicholas were at odds, of course. And so Nicholas was imprisoned for 5 years. So he spent 5 years in Israel, came back, and then was imprisoned for 5 years. So who knew Santa Claus has done time in the big house, so news flash. And but he survived that, and then eventually Diocletian stepped down. He's the only emperor to ever step down from service because of health issues. And then it was just a matter of a few years where Constantine came in and then eventually declared Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. And so that's Nicholas's life in a nutshell. But
yeah, that sounds like it. Well, a couple of things I was curious about, and then we've got other panelists that'll probably be joining us, including the founders of the network. And I saw also Jacoby was here and a number of others. But I know a lot of people, well, a couple of things that you brought up that I'd love to hear your thoughts about. I know that I've got friends of mine that are in that whole kind of divided family kind of environment, and you mentioned that was part of what got you interested in everything. So what advice would you give to folks that are in those divided situations? Because I know I've got some friends of mine that are feeling estranged from their young people because of the divorce. And of course, now we're in the holiday time, and this can be a difficult time when you're in the holidays and you're not always in your children's lives. And it sounds like part of your research was when you were going through a similar time. So I do have some friends that are going through this even now. So what advice would you give to folks that are finding these times to be difficult because they are going through separation or kind of divided family?
Yeah, it's such a tough situation. I mean, you're married, you have kids, you have two families. You're used to doing, creating traditions for your kids and going to so and so's house for Thanksgiving, so and so's house for Christmas. All the different things, and that's totally your life is turned upside down, and it's heartbreaking. And what you have to do, I had a saying, you have a choice: be bitter or get better. And
Mhm.
I chose I'm going to get better. I'm not going to let this bring me down. I'm going to love my kids more than ever. Any chance and every chance I have to be with them, I'm going to love on them. I'm going to be there for them, and we're going to have fun. And so one thing I did with my kiddos was I wasn't I was more into doing than having. And so that's one thing I shared with my kids. I'm like, all right, we're not, plus being divorced, your financial situation changes too, and money becomes, in my case, became much tighter. And so I just shared with them, look, we'll get each other some little presents, but let's make them more meaningful presents. Let's put some thought into them and think about, what's more meaningful, what the other person is going to appreciate. But then I also said I'm more into doing than having. And so we just started doing more things. And one thing I'd say is like that first Christmas, I'm like, all right, what we'll do is we'll take a big trip next summer. That's going to be our Christmas present. And so, and I was living in Reno, Lake Tahoe at the time, and my family's back east. And so that was our big trip going back and seeing my family. But it gave me time to save during that time. But then just during the holiday, so many Christmas things going on, with live nativities or ice skating or even baking cookies and watching, my kids, they'd ask me what I want for Christmas. I'm like, you know what I want? We're sitting down, we're making popcorn and cookies, and we're watching Charlie Brown Christmas and Little Drummer Boy. Those were my two favorite. And when they got a little older, It's a Wonderful Life I'd throw in there too, or Miracle on 34th Street. But just you can do that's what I thought is okay, it's my time with the kids. Now I can make Christmas my own and do what I want with the kids as far as Christmas. And of course, church and giving and serving was always part of it too. The local food kitchen, volunteering to go down there, bagging food, serving food, uh, baking cookies for a neighbor, putting them on the front porch, ringing the doorbell, running away and hiding and watching them open and find the cookies and, surprising them with little gifts like that. Just simple little things that don't cost a lot of money, but the kids, I'm more into making memories than buying a bunch of stuff that are going to be in a garage sale the next summer or buried in their closet somewhere. And so that's one way some changes we implemented, and it just made the season more meaningful as far as I was concerned.
That makes a lot of sense. Everything. I know one of the complaints that people have had about Christmas, and I'll bring in Jatopian, and I definitely want to hear about two of the other legends that exist as well. And I think I've got Sasha also and everything. But one of the complaints that people sometimes have about Christmas, particularly the Christmas season, is that it seems to start earlier every year. Sometimes people say it starts as early as July in terms of the Christmas spirit and in terms of the selling that goes on. And it definitely seems to be very much about the materialism, even though we know that's not what the season is all about. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that because it does seem like a lot of people get caught up in the materialism aspect of Christmas.
Exactly, yeah. And that's one reason why I want to write the book, is to show that the real Saint Nicholas wasn't about that. He was about giving, not receiving. And it's wonderful to receive, and people are blessed to give. So you have to be a gracious receiver for sure. But that shouldn't be the God gave us the greatest gift as far as I'm concerned, and then so we're called to give it back as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. I can definitely see that really quickly. And then Jacoby may want to jump in. And I know we've got Sasha who's coming up. That's from Canada. And hopefully Nick Valviero, one of the uh, founders of the network, will join in as well. But can you tell us a little bit about how this whole notion. I was joking about them being unionized, and I think there was even movies where that was featured and everything. But how did the kind of mythology of the elves and the reindeer come in? Because I understand reindeers are real, and there are actually such a thing as reindeers, even though they don't fly at all in that space. But how did this notion of reindeer and elf come into the Christmas narrative?
Yeah, it's interesting. So our history, the Dutch came and New York used to be New Amsterdam, and the Dutch and British used to fight back and forth. The British eventually won out. It's New York, but they had their tradition of St. Nicholas. And so through the centuries, Santa Claus was pretty established. Then in 1809, Washington Irving wrote his satirical book, The History of New York, and he dubbed St. Nicholas the patron saint of New York. And he mentioned about him being a plump little fellow. Fast forward to 1823, Clement Clark Moore wrote "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," or the real title, "A Visit from St. Nicholas." And then he described him even more, a little jolly little elf, rosy cheeks, smoking a pipe, that type thing. And then fast forward to the 1880s when Thomas Nast drew the current view of Santa Claus, as a jolly old fellow. And back in the Visit from St. Nicholas poem, he mentioned about the sleigh. In 1809, Washington Irving mentioned it was a wagon in the sky. Clement Moore made it into a sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer. And then it just kind of took off from there, where really by the 1880s with Thomas Nast and his drawings, made famous, really solidified that. And then the elves, there's been different traditions going back to Europe, that he had little helpers helping them. And that was always kind of peripheral. But as he became more commercialized from the 1880s on, the story, became more robust to what we know today.
Yeah, and what about the reindeer? Where did they play a role in there? Because, like I said, I do know that they are actual animals and everything, but how did that play into the narrative as well? Because everybody knows about Rudolph and Prancer and the Vixen and the various others.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to Clement Clark Moore's Clement Moore Clark. I forget spacing his name now. His poem. Again, Washington Irving mentioned his sleigh being flying, but then Clement, he added the 8 tiny. Yeah. So it's just people creating something using their imagination and it becoming popular and magical. That and it is a magical time of year, around Christmas, the birth of Christ, and then the tradition of Christmas trees and decorations and candles, and it's just a celebratory time. And so, and we as Americans, we love a party. Well, Mexico has a day. Hey, let's have Cinco de Mayo. St. Patrick's Day. The Irish. Hey, you got a celebration. We Americans will celebrate with you. It's all good.
Yeah, it sounds like it and everything. One of the things I was curious about, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, and like I said, there is this notion of folks wanting to be represented by the Santa Claus narrative. And I mentioned that right now we were having Black Santa Claus, or Santa, run by a company called Santa Like Me, and there's a number of other groups that are out there, including some Hispanic Santa Clauses. I think there are even some that have been celebrating Mrs. Claus, or having Mrs. Claus come out to events as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts around attempts to have greater diversity in the Santa Claus narrative, because that is something that I think has been a trend over the last several years. I just wondering your take as one that does research on that, around this diversity of the Santa Claus tradition.
I think it's great. I think that's part of, I mentioned about the movie in my head, and where the original St. Nicholas originated was Turkey. I mean, that's the Middle East. I mean, Santa, the real Santa, St. Nicholas, was a person of color. If you just picture someone who came from the Middle East, that was him. And Turkey was between Europe and Asia and Middle East proper. So there could have been some mixture of some blue-eyed kids or green-eyed kids or whatever somewhere in there, because that's one thing about his tradition. And what I love about him, because he was on the coast of the Mediterranean, which at the time was the main trading place of the world. I mean, the Mediterranean, you had Europe, you had Middle, you had Africa, and all the trading went all around there. And so people would stop off in Patara, and St. Nicholas would be there. They'd learn or meet him there, and just the love and care that he gave and the generosity that he had, that really the world took his legend back. That's how he spread around the world, was through that. I mean, he was so loved and so generous, and just really showed, Christ's true traits: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, all that good stuff that, people were just in awe of him. And, now there's St. Nicholas churches all around the world. And so to me, Santa, even though, back in the 1800s, he began as a white person as far as the American tradition went, the reality is he truly is a person of color from the Middle East, Turkey. And I'm all good with it. I'm actually living in Hollywood right now. I'm looking out at Hollywood Boulevard, and here I adapted the novel to screenplay. So now that's one thing I'm down here is starting to pitch the movie, and that's what I picture is I'm hoping to be able to film in Turkey, and then have a diverse cast, for sure, because that's the reality.
Yeah, you mentioned being in Hollywood, and I was joking earlier. So just really quickly before I turn it over to Jatofi and Sasha, if they've got any questions, but do you think there's any possibility, and I'm being slightly sarcastic with this question, of there being a union of the Elves? Because the Elves do a lot of work, and I know that was part of the conversation, even around what's going on in Hollywood. And there's also the notion, part of what the Hollywood conversation was, and we talked about it on the network, is AI. So I was wondering, does Santa feel threatened by the possibility of an elf union? And is Santa worried that AI may take over his job? Because a lot of people are worried that AI may take over a number of jobs. So what is your thoughts on that?
Answering the first question, I don't think Santa's worried about them unionizing, because he's generous, and he takes care of his elves. They don't have a worry. He love him, and he loves them. It's all a happy work environment. As far as the AI, it's one of the things, that was a big thing with the writers and the actors strike, and it's still the big talk here, AI, because AI is just blowing up and could replace a lot of jobs, but they got these contracts done, the strikes are over, and we'll see. But AI, I don't know. I don't think I'm an in-person person. This is great Zooming, but it's not the same as being in the same room with you gentlemen. And so I think there'll always be, the Santa visiting your place right now. And there's always something about the real, artificial intelligence. It's called artificial for a reason. And I think we all still hunger for the real contact.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, you mentioned it, and Jacoby actually has a sister that is in the Hollywood area and all along those lines. But how difficult has it been? Because I know one of the things that people talk about, even in the arts, is the gatekeepers and how hard it is to get any project greenlit and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, as you were there in Hollywood today and not originally from Hollywood, how difficult are you finding it to get the project greenlight, and what kind of roadblocks are you running into as you are doing that?
Yeah, it's my movie's going to be probably on the bigger budget side, and so coming from the faith-based movies, they've come a long way. The Sound of Freedom was probably the biggest. Well, Passion of the Christ, of course, Mel Gibson, 600 million. But yeah, just recently, The Sound of Freedom, I think they're pushing 200 million, something like that right now. So faith-based movies are getting bigger and better, and my movie will definitely be on the bigger budget side. So I'm just leaving it up to God and His hands. The big thing is finding someone who believes in the project as much as I do, and we actually, my co-writer has an agent. We actually just released the script to be read by producers last month. About a month ago, and we've had 13 requests for it. So that's the start. To me, the money will come. But in this day and age, there's so many independent producers. Of course, we still have the big studios, and they still, are the big kids on the block. But now there's so many independent producers now that, if you find people that believe in the project, like the Sound of Freedom, who believe in that message, with the sexual child trafficking, the money's going to, take care of itself, the actors, the directors, all that. So yeah, I think things are still happening. It's going to go gangbusters here after the holidays. The strikes ended. People are getting back in action, but Hollywood really shuts down for 2 weeks over the holidays. It's really interesting to see, projects, people. I was just at a fitting yesterday. I do some acting, and so I was getting fitted yesterday, and that was the costumers' last day. All the other people in the production were already on vacation, taking their 2 weeks. But come January, Hollywood's going to go crazy, and there'll be a lot of stuff going on. So I'm hopeful. I have the hope of the world in my life, and focus on the positive. There's so much negative everywhere. It's so easy to get caught up in that. And my advice is, especially like this weekend, if you're celebrating Christmas or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or whatever you're celebrating, tune out the news, focus on your family, enjoy each other, love on each other, and have fun, play games, and and pray. I'm a man of faith, so it's a daily prayer. What's going on when I hear something like all the news you were sharing earlier. I'm just thinking, Lord help us, Lord help us, Lord help us, and yeah.
That makes sense. Have you looked at all at because I know that one we just actually did a screening here of Bass Reeves, the lawman, or lawman Bass Reeves, and it was about a Reconstruction sheriff that was definitely in the African American community, and it did quite well on Paramount Plus. It actually shattered some records and all along those lines. So I was wondering if you had looked at any of those possibilities as well, because we do know that sometimes the live streaming space can be wonderful if you don't have the movie release in the movie houses and everything. So I was just wondering if that was a thing that y'all were considering, because like I said, Lauren Banks is actually from here, and she plays the wife of Bass Reeves, and that's part of the reason that we did the screening of the last episode here at this particular Cultural Arts Center. I was just wondering if you had considered that possibility.
The possibility of doing like a screening somewhere else, or
the screening either elsewhere, or also having go more in the live streaming space, kind of like what Paramount Plus is, and some of those things.
Yeah. No, I'm open to whatever God has. I really believe this is His project. He gave me. I'm not a detail person, but so for me to write this is a miracle unto itself, as far as I'm concerned. And so I'm just trusting in God. I do believe in my heart it's a full feature film with a theater release, but I'm going to follow His lead. I just believe in the message of what Saint Nick was all about, and he was all about sharing the good news of Jesus with everyone, and he lived it. He didn't just share it; he lived it. And here we are, almost 2,000 years later, still talking about him. And he's still touching people today, even though society has commercialized them and twisted them. But I think God's moving and doing something for us to be able to bring out who the real St. Nicholas was, and really get back to the true nature what this season and Christmas is all about.
Yeah, and Lee Newton Rhodes, and I think Jacoby and Sasha may have a question as well, but Lee Newton Rhodes, who is off camera, had asked where the whole red and white came from because he had heard through the grapevine that it was through Coca-Cola and all along those lines. And he's also asking, is there a war on Christian values in America? So I guess he would love to hear your thoughts about both of those as to whether there's a war on Christian values and where the red and white came from.
Yeah, yeah. The red and white, I believe, came from the bishop's robes back hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago. That they did have the red robe, the red. I don't know what kind of hat you'd call it, but you can probably picture one of the old pictures of a bishop's originated. It didn't just come out of anywhere because there are paintings of bishops back in the day, and I believe that's where that came from. As far as war on Christian values, yeah, I think that's been going on, since for a long time, and spiritually speaking, we are at war. There's a spiritual war going on, and being a person of faith. When I see something in the natural going on that you open the show with and what we see every day on the news, there's that war going on in the natural, but for me, it's supernatural. There's an unseen war going on, between good and evil, and that's where the prayers come in. That the prayers are a spiritual weapon against evil. And so, yeah, there's definitely people who do not want Christian values and Christian love, joy, peace, all that stuff to be prevalent. They want to push their own evil ways on it, and there is evil in the world. And you've discussed a lot of it at the beginning of the show, and it's heartbreaking, and it's where we come in as people of faith and step up, and it's our battle. Yeah.
Jacoby or Sasha, I don't know if y'all have any questions for Mr. Wayne and some of the things that are going on in that space. So I guess I'll turn it over to you, Jacoby. You've been hearing that, and I know you've got young ones, so maybe you got some thoughts as well.
Actually, since we talked about where the elves fit in, where the reindeer fit in, but there are the other, I guess, mythos or mythology or the thought, celebrations around that same time, because you have the lights. Well, thinking Star Wars, like you have the light side and the dark side. Well, there's Santa Claus, but there also is a tradition where people celebrate Krampus. Where does that fit in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Krampus. Yeah, that came from the Germanic Nordic time period during the medieval ages, if I remember correct. So again, it's the whole good versus evil that we've seen, throughout history. And so there's the good Santa, that if you've been good, he's bringing you some, apples, oranges, toys, whatever. But then there's the bad Santa. And that's who Krampus was in that region at the time. Was Krampus. He was coming. He was going to whoop you with a stick and give you coal. And so he was like the bad Santa. And that's where, from my research, that's where he came from. Yeah.
Now, I'm thinking that speaking of the naughty and nice list, and I know that everybody wants to be on the nice list so that you can get the good gifts and all along those lines. But I'm thinking that some of our world leaders, and I alluded to some of them earlier, and I'm thinking that there are some that are probably going to get I'm thinking like a whole house full of coal and all along those lines. But I just wonder your thoughts, because there are some leaders out there that have been doing some atrocious things. So, and even some organizations that have been doing some atrocious things. So I'm thinking that they're not exactly going to be on the nice list, they're probably on the naughty list and all in that space. And then you've also got folks that will joke that they want to be on the naughty list because there's some naughtiness that some people enjoy and everything. So I just wanted your thoughts around the naughty and nice list, and how much of that should we be trying to get on the nice list, and how difficult is it to get on the nice list? And am I correct in thinking that some of the world leaders are seriously on the naughty list?
Yeah. My thought is, we as humans, we're all in this together. And, again, two choices: be bitter or get better. I choose better, and I pray other people will choose better and have the best interests. Power corrupts or can corrupt. And, I'll be honest, I'm an older, mature guy now. I think if I was in a place of power, I could handle it much better. But if I look back, if I was back in my 20s or 30s, or even being here in Hollywood, if I got the stardom and fame back then, who knows, trying to handle that. I might go in with nice intentions, and you see people who go in with good intentions into politics, into acting, into being musicians or whatever, but then you get that fame and fortune. Wow. And so the Bible warns about a lot of that. And so, yeah, it's as far as, these leaders that, deserve a house full of coal or whatever. Yeah. In the end, again, Jesus talked about love your enemies, pray for them, pray that their hearts will be changed, their hearts will be softened, that their eyes will be open to, the horrors are inflicting on people, the ears will be open to hear from wise counsel, and that they will have a change of heart. And, I just think of Saul in the Bible. He became Paul, one of the greatest, strongest Christians that has written most of the books in the New Testament, and he used to murder Christians for the Jewish leaders, and and he had a change of heart. So I just think we have a lot of Sauls running around today, and I'd love to see them become Pauls, and that's my hope, that's my prayer. And if they don't, I just know how the story ends, and we're all going to get our consequences, whether it's good consequences or bad in the end. And that's ultimately up to God and how he's going to deal with people. But I hope people have changed their hearts and become loving, caring people, and change their ways.
Hey, Wayne, along those same lines, I know that you've written a couple books, and one of your other books deals with a animal, and all along those lines. And I know that some people also give gifts to their animals as well. And even though I don't currently have any animals, I know that Jacoby does. I don't know if Sasha does. I know that the founder, Nick, does, because he oftentimes talks about Tilly. But you had a book that was called Beware Corky. And I'm thinking that that was a dog, and all along those lines. But I was just wondering, do you think that we spend enough time even helping our animals during this holiday times? And if you could tell us just a little bit about that particular book as well.
Animals are a gift from God. And the book Beware Corky the Yorkie is a sock thief was actually based on a real dog. My mom, before she passed away, she had Corky, and 2 years later she passed away. She asked me to keep him in the family, and so then I had him for another 11 years with growing up with my kids, and so I wrote the book in honor of her and of Corky, because of the joy Corky brought to our family's lives. And we had a couple other dogs too, love animals. And I think they're just a joy. I grew up with cats too, and all kinds. We had, like a lot of families, you do the frogs and snakes and, hamsters and gerbils and birds and, all. But I think, to me, they're God's creation. They're beautiful. God gave us, to be in space in the Word to take care of the world, and I think that includes the animals. And Yeah, I think they have their place. I mean, I know some people that, I'm probably stepping on some toes here, but I mean, they're limited on funds, but then they're spending thousands on maybe something having they're going in debt, for a surgery or something for an animal, and you know, might want to cut this part out. I'm probably making someone mad, but at the same time, you gotta, you know, make a tough decision there that, all right, it's a wonderful pet. It's giving you joy and pleasure and you love it. But at the same time, you can't make your family suffer, going in debt to take, trying to lengthen its life. I don't know. Cut this part out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everything. We'll cut it out, but definitely that your statement makes a lot of sense and all along those lines. I know that Sasha is there, and he may have a question for you as well. And we're going to be doing his Ukraine, Russia, China show very shortly and everything. But Sasha is a master chess player. I mean, he is a champion. His wife is a champion out of Canada, and all along those lines. So my question for you, since we're having a lighthearted one on today's World Edition, since it is a few days before Christmas. And as you mentioned, we did talk about a lot of the hard hitting stuff earlier, and we'll get back to that next week and everything. But is Santa Claus a chess player? And can Santa Claus take on Sasha? This is my question for you: has Santa Claus learned the game of chess?
Are you
Wayne?
asking me or
Yes,
Sasha?
I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. Hey, Saint Nick's a sharp guy, and he has a lot of time. Him and the elves. If you're reading my book, they're industrious. They love education. They love school. They love games. It's not just the reindeer that love reindeer games. It's the elves that love games too, and Santa and them. So I don't know about Sasha. I know he'd whoop my fanny for sure. I have no problem, but I think it'd be fun. I think he'd enjoy sitting with Santa, Saint Nick, and having a game and seeing how it goes. It'd be fun to watch. Actually, I'd enjoy that.
Could be a very interesting match and everything. Sasha, I know it's been a lighter hearted one, but it's the feel till days before Christmas. We'll get back to the more serious stuff on next week and everything, and definitely on your show in a few minutes. But if you got a quick question for Wayne, and then, like I said, we'll get back to the more hard hitting news on next week's editions. I think we are taking off on Monday, but I got to check with Nick on that.
My question would be what uh, Jesus Christ, Paul, and Peter, as being famous Jews, would advise to Israel what to do today in its conflict with Gaza.
Yeah, for me personally, coming from a biblical standpoint, having all the respect in the world for uh, Jewish people, and I've been to Israel and I loved it, and I can't wait to go back. And we share a lot of the same traditions, and you know they are. That's one of my daily prayers in my quiet time is for Israel, and my prayers for them are, I just look at all the in the Old Testament, uh, from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob on down the lineage of the Jewish people, and the wise ones, they went to God and they asked him first, please give us wisdom, please give us counsel. They started there, and then they would bring in the prophets or other wise men or even women into and make sure and hear from everybody and to make wise decisions as far as when to do what and how. I can't imagine being in their place right now, dealing with what they're doing. Here they're being attacked on three fronts, and then we're seeing the rise of anti-Semitism all around the world. And for me, God can bring good out of bad, and I think in a way this is a good thing, is because He's exposing people's hearts. He's exposing who's for Him, who's against Him, and we'll see where it all leads. but I'm praying for peace in the end for Israel and for everyone around them.
I
That's all.
think I was contacted by one person who insists that there is something in Old Testament which is Torah, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, you're familiar with that?
With the Torah?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
Testament, yeah. And is there anything suggesting that the Jews should kill anybody who is non-Jew? Have you ever run into that?
I think I can't think of a specific scripture that would say that, but it's clear that if you're an enemy of God and an enemy of Israel, if you're an enemy of Israel, you are an enemy of God. And they try to live in peace. They've tried to live in peace. They were scattered around the world for 2,000 years. To me, it's a miracle that it's a miracle that they came back as a nation. They're the only people in the world that, and for as a Christian standpoint, that has something to do with the end times. So that's a whole another show. But no, I don't think God's not a God of just killing anyone who's not for them. But yeah, there is a time and place where you have to protect your own, and uh, and so that's the balance. I think that's where the wise counsel and wisdom comes in to seek for the Israeli people on what to do, where to go, how to do it, to whom, and so on. It's very delicate, so they really need God's leading as far as all that goes.
Before we get
If
out of
you
here,
take that out of context and just concentrate just on these few words, then you can go as far as justifying Hitler's actions by murdering 6 million Jews, suggesting that he perhaps read Torah and he ran into suggestion that Jews should kill all non-Jews. And so he wanted, by preserving German nation, he wanted to kill as many Jews as he could. Do you think is there any validity in this suggestion?
I do not. No, I do not.
yeah, just
Oh,
along those same lines as we're going to walk out the door and everything, just really quickly, Wayne, if you tell folks how you can be reaching, like I said, we're going to have the Ukraine, Russia, China show very shortly and everything, but just kind of alluding to what Sasha was just talking to, what do you think the message that St. Nick would give to people in these very divided times? Because they're very divided, not just here in the United States, but around the world as well. And definitely, I know that there are a number of different faiths, not just Christianity, but also Islam and Hindus and a number of other folks. So, what do you think the message of Saint Nick and even the message of Jesus would be to the world and all along these lines in these very divided times? And then you just tell us you can be reached as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think Saint Nick's message is the same as Jesus's. That you know, peace and goodwill to all toward all men, and it all starts with looking at who Jesus was. He was, you know, love, joy, the fruits of the Spirit. His Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I think that's his wish, Saint Nick's wish and prayer for everyone. And I picture it as, uh, a ballerina doing, I think it's called a pirouette, where she's spinning. And how they do it is they keep a focal point. They look straight ahead. Their head spins. They catch it, and they have that centers them. And I believe Jesus is our focal point. We should be keeping our eyes on him, no matter how the world's spinning and out of control and crazy and chaotic. That his example and whom the Saint Nick tried to reflect is our example as well. We only have so much control. I can't control what's happening in other neighborhoods, states, countries, but I can control how I interact with the people I interact with, and that my goal is to bring those fruits of the spirit, the love, the joy, the peace, especially this time of year, but all year.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
I
how you
appreciate
can reach me,
Yep.
WayneVanderWal.com is one of the websites, or thegospelofsantaclaus.com are two ways to reach me. And the books, and the Corky book for little kids is, it's everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. If they're out, they'll order it for you. And yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Glad to have you on. Like I said, definitely a very holiday oriented kind of show for World Edition. We'll be back to the hard hitting news on next week. I think we'll start back on Tuesday, since most of us will probably be gone on Monday, but that could be subject to change and everything. But definitely we'll be back next week with some more interesting news around the world and some more interesting guests as well. But I do appreciate you being on, Wayne, and I can speak on behalf of both Sasha as well as Nick Palveda and others also. So we're getting ready to get on out of here, but hope you have a Merry Christmas, and hopefully you'll get that movie sold and all along those lines. And maybe me and Sasha can find a way to watch it, him in Canada and me here in the Durham area, and all along those lines. So hopefully in 2024, we'll see that movie become a success. But right now, we're going to get on out of here and start Ukraine, Russia, and China. But once again, I want to thank you for being on.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Yep. Bye-bye. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yeah.